All right, guys, welcome back to the channel. J.L. Scott Fishing. Hope everybody's doing well. Just got back off the water on the upper Potomac. Check out that video on the YouTube channel from on the river. And this is the follow-up video for that, talking about what we're looking at for the upper Potomac for wintertime fishing, okay? Especially, obviously, for smallmouth bass in the Piedmont section of the upper Potomac. And it's a companion to a post I put on the J.L. Scott Fishing and Eats Facebook page. And I got a lot of direct messages about how I went into detail into a lot of areas, but how they wanted it like more in video form than in, the Facebook post form with the maps. So these are where I generate my maps from. Okay. When you go and you look on my Facebook page and I break down boundaries for event series and events for the Smallie Chaser River Bassin series, for example, that'll be on the upper Potomac as well this season coming up in 2024. And I started that post with Brunswick. So I'm going to do the same here in the video series. Okay. Brunswick is obviously downriver from Harpers Ferry and Knoxville. That is obviously another float that you can do from just above Harpers Ferry down to Brunswick if you want. It's actually a really, really nice float. But I started this part from Brunswick to Monocacy, okay? So I go into pretty much in-depth on all of these spots in the upcoming book that I'm having published in 2024. It should release in the spring, barring any delays, but it should be released in the spring. I actually got some really great photos today to include. That's kind of like been my wintertime project now that this actually all written is now going back and putting in photos to supplement the descriptions for all these sections and floats and holes and points and islands and breaks and ledges and all that stuff. So it's been a lot. It's been a blast because I love the river. Grew up on the river up until I was 12. Over in Loudoun County, which is over here on this side of the Potomac River. And so it's been really, really great to be back up here and to be able to basically fish this river 3-4 times a week. Caveat to everything, as I said in the video today, Potomac River's back. It's coming back, okay? And we basically have two population classes right now that are abundant in the fishery. We've got about a 10 to 13, 10 to 12 and a half inch population that is the larger population, okay? And then we've got a population that is in that 15 and a half to 17. That's probably the second biggest population based on catch rates and based on everything this year and over the last 2 years. And so we're really probably about a year or two away from seeing a considerable amount of more side. Now, some citations have gotten caught in the Potomac this year, okay? But I'm talking about a lot more, on par with some other river systems. Like Susquehanna, for example, or the New River, for example, James River, okay? Because we had massive flooding in 2 occasions, especially 2018, classes got wiped out, okay? And we've been building back the last 5 years. We may not see it until 2025, but we have all of the ingredients right now in the upper Potomac and the Piedmont section to promote that. We've got great grass growth now. We've got clean water now, okay? We haven't had any 15, 16 feet above floodplain events, okay, that would have decimated the grass, the vegetation, the forage, and the small juveniles, okay? Let alone a spawning class. So we've been very, very lucky, all right? So that's the caveat to this going into why I'm excited about releasing the book in next year, because I believe we're probably a year away. We're probably 2 springs away from really seeing some serious 4, 5, and up being caught pound-wise on a consistent basis, okay? And that's through the Piedmont, up through Harpers Ferry, all the way up to Williamsport or Shepherdstown, Williamsport, all the way up, okay? when I'm, in terms of the whole river system. The Piedmont section definitely gets more impacted, I believe, by flooding below Harper's Ferry than necessarily in the upper part, for sure. But so we're going to start with Brunswick, Maryland, on the Maryland side of the river, which you can see. Let me zoom in a little bit more for you so you can see here. Okay, there's basically 2 ramps in Brunswick. You have your option. I say that with a caveat again because one is a campground and predominantly used by visitors of that campground, but there have been people that have used that. So you just need to double check and make sure with the campground, maybe if they're allowing people to access the river that aren't camping there. From what I understand, sometimes they do. From what I understand, sometimes they don't. So it really all depends on what is up to them. So you definitely want to double check on that. And that campground is a little bit further downriver than the Brunswick boat ramp, which is right at the bridge. It's probably about 15, depending on size, truck, trailer, and all that stuff, about 15 parking spaces. All right. Now, let me see if I can get this a little bit bigger for you. See if it's going to name the islands we talk about. Now, what's interesting, see if I go satellite view. Maybe that'll work a little bit better for us. Perfect. Now, so you've got the Brunswick Islands above Brunswick. Okay, so that's upriver from your boat ramp, which you absolutely can check out. With the shallow shelf, okay, in this area. All right. Why you're going to see you'll see a lot of people wade fishing. You'll see a lot of people, doing all that because it can be shallower or shallowish on the Maryland side of the river. So it does offer that great wade fishing. And so some people will head upriver and then come back downriver. You can kind of see what you have upriver, okay, in a stretch. Downriver, okay, which is really how I started it as a float from Brunswick to Landers, okay, is a very, very popular float. Love it. It's an easy float. And when I say that easy floats, understand that what I'm talking about is under typical conditions. If you have low water conditions, okay, like under 2 feet, like we have had, I always check the Point of Rocks gauge, okay, which is below Lander, okay, the Lander boat ramp, where the Point of Rocks ramp is. I always check that, all right? And it usually gives me a pretty good indicator, give or take 4 or 5 inches above or below, okay? River does get a little wider there, but it's just a good, an indicator. When you're under 2 feet, it can be a little bit of a longer float because you're not going to have the current flow that you would get at 3 feet or so, okay? So distance is the same, but the time for you to traverse that distance is a little bit different. So if you're heading downriver to Landers, it is just over 3.5 miles, okay? So it's a 3.5 mile float, all right? And on the way, you're going to come across some really great opportunities, okay? And you basically have three sections, and I don't guess they're not gonna have them on here. Maybe they will if we zoom in a little bit more. I guess they're not. They won't have here. A lot of times the satellite don't have the islands listed by name or the rips listed by name. So I included that on the Facebook page. Let me see if we can. Might be able to plug those in and then put it back on the back onto the page for everybody. So you basically have the fence, Luckett's, and Sawbuck. It's basically 3 stages before you get to Landers, okay? And they're all about the common denominator between 2 of them are elevation changes, okay? Which is why you get the rip, all right? So you're going to have current, and below that current, you're going to have plenty of areas adjacent to the Maryland side or Virginia side in which you're going to be able to use and work your baits with that current and define them. during different times of the year. Now, in wintertime, they're going to be in the deeper water in any deeper pool, okay? Probably I saw in fall, early fall, through the transition to late mid-November, those bass had moved. Predominantly, the catches were coming from the Sawbuck area, okay, which is further down before the bend, okay? And there's your lander boat ramp right there. So your Sawbuck is in here, okay, and you find on the Virginia side, you're going to find some deeper water. And it is actually, that deeper water is actually coming in the backdrop of another ledge, okay? So you've got the ledge, and then you've got a drop-off. That drop-off becomes deeper water, a pool, if you will, because it's so different than the other side, okay, in terms of what depth. Now, there is deeper water right adjacent to oftentimes boat ramps on the Maryland side because of how they are. Trying to think about how deep typically there's some deeper water near Brunswick as well. I think above the ramp as well. When you're getting into landers, though, you do have deeper water, okay, adjacent to the boat ramp. All right, and you're gonna have shallower water here. This all bumps out here. This can get shallow, rocky, but I mean my shell bed, rocky. You find a lot of crayfish, a lot of crawl, all up in here. It's actually a really, really good area. Across from that ramp is where you're going to find deeper water, and then up above, deeper water on the Virginia side. You also have the creek that comes in here. That creek, a lot of times, it's one of my favorite places to fish in the fall. You usually get a lot of chub forage up in there. And depending on the water levels, and you'll know by the mouth really whether or not the fish are going to be up in there. If you're down below 2.5 feet, 2 feet, it's probably not worth your time. But that being said, the smallies will push back up in there and push bait fish back up in there and pin them, okay? And so if you've got water that can get you all the way to the aqueduct, usually it's in the 2.5 feet zone. If you're at 3 feet, there's a 3 feet. If Potomac Rocks is at 3 feet, you're definitely going to have water up in there. And it can be a very prolific area during different times of the year. It's just not real deep water for the wintertime. And so they're typically usually not there beginning late fall and into early winter. They'll move, if they were there, they'll move out and they'll move to the Virginia side. Okay. That's the 3.5 mile stretch to from Brunswick to Lander. Okay. Now from the Lander boat ramp, it's pretty nice parking, by the way. You'll cross into that over the canal, Lock 29. In there, it's obviously it's not paved. It's like more like dirt where the gravel just keeps getting pushed and embedded in the ground. But it's a nice ramp. It's easy to access. You'll have to deal with a lot of bank guys, a lot of catfish guys, fish along this bank. You go up in here. You've got a bump out island area that's kind of up in there, and then you got the creek that comes up in that. A lot of people hit. As you come down here, you got Lander Branch, but you've got down. You're going to end up down to the Bald Eagle hiker campsite. All down through here is one of those. When they're there, they're there. You'll catch 20, 30 smallmouth bass in this stretch between Lander and Pointer Rocks. Easy. It's just all comes down to the size during different times of the year. And you've got about 2.5 miles, a little less than 2.5 miles from Lander all the way down to Pointer Rocks. And it's, what I mean by down, it's straight down. Like you're moving down, not just downriver with flow, but elevation wise, you're moving down. Okay. And then your ramp is going to be right here. and you've got the islands like Patton, that and the chutes that go between these islands. I recommend for myself that if you're coming down, for me, it's easier to do the buddy system and launch at landers to me and get out at Point of Rocks and just fish that whole area and come down from upriver where you can run the chutes to the Virginia side and fish a lot of those holes that are on that side, than to try and go, especially in low water, to try and go up from Point of Rocks. People do it. I've done it. It's just a lot more work. I mean, that's a reality, because you're going to come up. The islands are so big, you're going to have to be paddling up, then to come around and get in here. Okay, it's just a lot easier on you to fish through here, and then make your determination on whether you want to stay this side and then hit the chute right here, okay, or you want to just keep coming down this side. Done them both numerous times. It really just depends. It really depends on the water level, on what you want to do. This water level really low. This could be like basically you're walking your kayak through that chute. It's a lot like Swain's Lock further downriver. So you've got those chutes between the islands like Patton and Broken. You also have which are below Hook Falls, and you'll know what I mean. The falls. Falls has a. I cover this in the book. A fall to Marylanders on the Upper Potomac is not exactly the same thing as a fall on the James River or the New. Okay, so a lot of times falls are more place names, historic, not necessarily size, rapid, or condition. When we're talking about the Upper Potomac. You want to look for just above Patton, okay, down here. In here, you can find some deeper water. So if you can run through that chute, the other thing that you can do, and it depends, again, like I said, if it's low water, you can come down through here, and then you can actually tether your kayak up into here, and fish this area right here, okay? All in through here can be very, very good, okay, in the fall and in the winter. It has a little deeper water, a lot of rocks left and right, deeper pool, like a 3 foot. Because remember, a foot change is a big deal in the Upper Potomac in some of these areas. If you go check the video I did today out on the river and showed you some areas that you could just tell where that deeper water was, okay? You're going to come down, obviously, Maryland side towpath. There is access points here. A lot of people will wade fish, bank fish, more so on the Maryland side than I believe on the Virginia side. But you also have the boat ramp on the Virginia side. If you're coming from the Virginia side, you could just do the same thing. You don't have to access the Point of Rocks ramp. You can access McKinney Point of Rock here on the other side of the bridge on the Virginia side. You're going to have heaters. It's a big island historical. I cover that in the book as well. The historical nature of basically the indigenous peoples, Algonquin and others, Algonquin, Seneca, Iroquois, and others in this area of the region. And Heaters Island was a big encampment. We would call it an encampment for the Native Americans. So it definitely has a lot of historical significance before they actually moved further up and joined tribes further up north. But like I said, it is a big island, and it does not do this. The map doesn't really do its justice. So you're going to pick either side that you're going to go around. I prefer the envelope around, okay, if I'm going down. And so I've done that more times than the Virginia side. I should probably commit some more time to the Virginia side. And in this area, you will come more in contact with jet boats. You will come more in contact with boaters, John boats, and that stuff, as opposed to further down river. Just to make you aware of that. See if I said anything, wanted to cover anything else in the post before we get to Nolan's. Before we get to Nolan's, and so you've got a little bit longer run here, okay, and it's a pretty straight. The river's pretty much like that until you get to these island sets, okay, at Nolan's. There's another launch at Nolan's if it's open. They've been doing a lot of work. Sometimes it's open, sometimes it's not. They've been doing a lot of land improvements and stuff at Nolan's Ferry, but you have Nolan's Island, Nolan's Ferry Canal Walk, okay, canal right there. You've got Nolan's Island. You got the islands on this side. And it's really just, you got the islands up here too. And for the most part, the upper Potomac in the Piedmont section is always characterized by island breaks. Until you get to Old Dam 2 below Seneca Landing, it's basic. And then below Old Dam 2 to Swains Lock, it's all about island breaks and islands and points and off of islands and then deeper water adjacent to the current flow that's coming downriver. Those are your best bets. And when you target that deeper water, that's really, really what you're looking for. So the launch is near the southern end, like I said, of Nolan's Island. So there are people who will go up and people who will come back around. Okay, and then back down before you get to Paradise. You always tend to see people over here. It's just one of those things where it's kind of like a circular thing. You can go downriver to go up. It's probably easier to go up on the Maryland side and then to come downriver on the Virginia side if you want to get into these islands up in this way. And obviously Paradise and Birdsall as you work your way down. Okay. And you also have the creek. Let's see if we could. Yeah, we go. We have another creek area entering in the upper Potomac from here. So again, you see all these chutes. These chutes, just like down at Swains and Pennyfield. These chutes are basically run lanes for the smallies. It's very shallow water typically. Okay, depending on the time of year, but it's during the summertime, late summer, early. It's very, very, wintertime. It really depends. Just check your gauge. Check the little gauge at the bottom of, or the Point of Rocks gauge. And that those would be good indicators. And you got Edwards Ferry has their gauge. Edwards Ferry is always deeper water. It's always deeper water. Within half mile above or below Edwards Ferry and White's Ferry, that's deeper water. That's just the topography. Okay. That's why you have a lot more boats going out of Edwards Ferry than anywhere else in this section of the river. But the chutes are really the transition lanes. And so a lot of times you can get them on the opposite sides, okay? Especially when you're talking about sun-soaked banks, okay? Where's the warmer water in the wintertime? It's what has the sun been beating down on the longest, even in the wintertime, that changes that river temp just a little bit, right? Okay? So you got one between Cox and Birdsall, okay? Just like you had up above. And you've got this where they break, basically these islands break the flow of the river coming down. All right. And then we reached the Monocacy. Okay. Now I didn't cover this in the Facebook post because I was going to break it off and do another post for the Monocacy River group for those guys. But you've got the aqueduct right here. Now this has been an area that's been kind of transitioning. It used to be very, very good. Now there tends to be a lot more catfish. Tend to be more prolific there now. It's very rocky. Like in the bottom composition is more like soft mud. Okay, and then rock, all broken up rock that's underwater. But it's just not. It's gotten to the point where with that water coming down constantly. Because this is where Monocacy River is dumping into the upper Potomac. It's just for some reason, I think, from a There's a lot less, hardly any grass or vegetation except for really up by the aqueduct itself. But like in that area, and I think that's maybe like run off some of the smallies from them. They'll move up in here, but it's definitely not as good as it used to be the last couple of years. Now that being said, on the other side of the aqueduct, boat ramp is here, so guys will come through here and then they'll hit the river. Okay, but this year was an outstanding year on the Monocacy. I'm talking 17s, 18s, and 19s, okay, on the Monocacy. That is the first year I have had any experience in the last 5 of catching significant numbers of smallmouth bass in that density class, okay? Also, not as much down here, but further up river, there's also a growing population of walleye. They are still in the nice size, abundant range. There's, I haven't come across and haven't talked to anyone who's come across like Dam 4 walleye on the Upper Potomac yet, but the numbers are definitely increasing. And so we'll see how that relationship is between the smallmouth and the wallies in the Monocacy. But you want to go up to Route 28. Let's shrink this a little bit. Monocacy Natural Resource Area. There's a bridge right here, Route 28. A lot of people, break this up. This part below the 28 is really part of the Upper Potomac kind of like mindset because of, you've got the boat ramp here. It's really close. It's not a long distance. And then you've got those that really consider the Route 28 to be that break. And then as you go further up to Monocacy River. On Monocacy River to the boat ramp up here and points further is significant availability for wade fishing. Awesome wade fishing. There are times when the river gets a little bit, higher, but it's basically this year's been basically around 2.5 feet for the most of the years. Probably it's at that could be the high end of the average. But you got a parking lot here, and then you can get out, fish down here. You can go as long as you want that way or that way. You can put your kayak in. If you want to go do that little run, that's a really neat, easy run is from here all the way down to the aqueduct, or even get into the Upper Potomac and just, like I said, the buddy system, and just to go down that when you got 2 cars, it really works out, really makes it good. That way you can get into the Upper Potomac, and then come back and then exit on the Monocacy boat ramp. So that is just a breakdown of that section, Brunswick to Monocacy, okay? And then further down, you can kind of see here what we're talking about. Okay, Monocacy, Dickerson, and then you've got where the Potomac banks right to Virginia, okay, and then winds and goes straight on down, okay. And you'll see to the Leesburg area on the Virginia side, Harrison Island, okay, and then you're going to get down to the heavy concentrated development of Loudoun County, okay, from Leesburg on down Route 7 to Sterling. You got where I grew up, Algonquin Regional Park, where I was a kid. I was alive when I think it opened when I was 3. You've got Lowe's Island, Trump National Golf Course. Today, if you check out the video today on YouTube, it'll be before this video. This is the area, Seneca and Seneca Breaks, where I was today filming, okay? And I was in this area over here, okay? And so that's another section I'll break down in another video, and we will take care of that going forward. All right, mates.